Morning, welcome to the other side of Good Morning Anambra. Like we said earlier on, this morning we shall be talking about the proposed tax reform bill. Wow, there is a whole lot of weight that this tax bill is gathering from every nook and cranny of this country, from the legislative arm and down to even the executive. There's been this log ahead and tug of war. But in the studio this morning, I have someone that will be telling us the nitty-gritty of it all, and we'll be talking extensively on the benefit of it. Oh, well, if you're just joining us, my name is Ajuluchuku Okabwe. Still saying a Happy New Year. We still happen to be in the first week of the year 2025. And let me just give you a little update on what we'll be talking about. The tax reform bill in Nigeria is a comprehensive legislative arm at overhauling the country's tax system. It is comprised of four main bills: the Tax Nigeria Bill, NTB, 2024, the Nigerian Tax Administration Bill, NTAB, the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill, NRSEB, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill, JRBB. Wow. That's what the whole nomenclature is. In the studio this morning, I have none other than Barrister Chris Arukwe. Barrister, Happy New Year. This New Year.
No. I extend my best and kindest expectations to our people all over the world watching us and to the good people of Anambra State. I wish that things get better for all of us in all our different dispositions. Those who didn't do the Christmas, those who did lavishly, those who remember, those who got some palliatives. We also thank those who distributed things for the poorer members of our society. I'm really glad that all of us came off it without loss of limbs and lives. May God bless our state. May He be well with us.
Thank you. Amen to that. And quickly, well, we said it all, tax reform bills, and then the legislative arm and then the executive seem to be, dragging on this issue. Should it actually be? What is it? What is in it for us? And then what is in it for the masses? In your own experience, what do you say? Would you say this is coming at the very right time where we're having this economic, well, I say hardship or strangulation, as the case may be?
Yeah. I am glad that I read the disclaimers before we take off. All the views I have are my private thought and my private views, and it has nothing to do with ABS or responsibility or Ajulu, my friend here. The basic thing is that when we were in college, we used to have what they call a scale of preference, where the economic people who studied economics placed their priorities in a descending order of importance or priority, scale of preference. Then I would believe that the same principle of economics that talks about scale of preference should order and impel any government policy or decision. When that scale of preference, order of merit, order of priority is disrupted and emotions and sentiments take over policy choice at a material time, it brings a clog in the wheel of progress, it brings disruptions in the wider society, and it disrupts the basic fabric of the objective of such a policy. The policy is actually to garner more revenue so that production, development can happen faster. That is the central objective of any tax regime, order or reinformation or reorder.
Gather or reduce the loopholes where this money is leaked away. You don't get to, government doesn't have enough to actually work with. They generate, but enough is not going for government to actually work.
Yes, you just got it right. But what we're saying is that the basic objective of any tax reform is to make it more egalitarian, while also taxing the people who have the base.
It is captured in this.
Yes. And they're about not just taxing the people or broadening the tax base, making it a little more reformative, because tax is used as a means of societal equilibration. That is, tax is used as an instrument to either to give to the poor or lessen the burden of the poor and transfer it to the better placed, affluent upper chambers of people. So that is basically the norm about the taxation. And there are also all sorts of principles. But in Nigeria, now we are here to discuss the tax reform base and all that. You would ask yourself, like I introduced a little bit of concept, is it the real thing now?
Yeah.
Somebody has said, is something, a lot of people have read up because of, I was invited 2 days ago to this. I read up opinions of people. A lot of people kind of feel it's a good idea generally about tax reform. What do you want to achieve? To have a codified tax base, tax law that you can pick up in a book, in a code, in a statute, in an act, and glean through it and find what you're looking for. Instead of going to Abuja to look for Petroleum Tax Act, you go to Lagos to look for the Minerals Act, you go to Akwa Ibom to look for the VAT Act and all that. All series of up to 16 tax acts are going to be locked into the tax reform. That's generally a good idea, codification, bringing everything into a single-handable tax law, now bill, then an act. So we are saying, is it a sign? Is it a moon that came too early? Is it the first sign? Is it the right time? Is it the real thing? You know, let me just simplify it before we go into the act actually. If you go to a party and there's a fight, people break bottles, clatter the whole place. Broken bottles are all over the place. And you pick on the disc board, you put the best danceable music. And you expect people to go dance over the clatter, over the broken bottles, over the shrapnels.
So long they are wearing shoes, I don't think that should be a problem.
Oh, yes. You keep crushing the bottles and the shrapnels will spring up and hurt people. There are some dances you don't wear shoes to dance. So it doesn't modify what position I'm trying to say. I say if you want to, for example, if you want to do something adorable, you clear the clutter.
But with what you've just said now, how come state governors are not conforming, wanting to even adopt these tax rules, the tax reform? How come the legislative arm are still having issues with the executive in implementation of this tax? Because somehow it doesn't seem to favor them. Take, for instance, the nomenclature of the fact that, okay, the states with high population tend to have more derivation from government when it comes to equity sharing and everything. They give to you more because you have more local government, you have more land mass, but this tax reform is telling that no, nothing should be done based on that anymore. It should be based on what you're bringing to the table. And that should make each state governor, each local government mayors now look inward and think of how well they can generate extra.
Yeah. Yes.
In order to boost their own economy, local economy.
Actually, you just moved me into the discussion, which I'm hoping to get into just in a few minutes, in a few moments. I'm trying to lay the foundation.
Okay.
The thing I'm going to go away from here is that the tax reform is not what we need now. And it should not even be a topical subject matter for discussion. Because you're doing a tax reform, what you should do egalitarianly is to clear the clutter, clear corruption, make civil service proficient and efficient, implement the Rasanya reform report, which you promised to do. Reduce the size of governance and ease of government. You said all is well, that all your 48 governors, ministers, are doing extremely well and that they are doing laudable. 48 ministers in a third world country. Well, America, with all its sophistication, is running a system of not more than 15 ministers of state or whatever, secretaries of state. The nomenclature doesn't matter. We should have a lean government, efficient lean government, with a lean, efficient civil service. Not one that sees over the distribution of the resources, the budget, and the external borrowing, where we have the capacity to use what we have to do better and make Nigeria to move instead of all these leakages. What are you taxing? Where 130 million Nigerians are out of the tax bracket. Anybody who is earning 70,000 pounds, 70,000 naira per month is excluded from the tax base. And you know also that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. That name hasn't been eroded by anything tangible. So what is the tax reform going to be dealing with? What is the population? Who are you taxing? America lives on corporate taxation.
Likewise, Britain too.
Yeah. So the corporations, the homogeneous, the big companies, the expatriate companies, they have left Nigeria. 5 left last year. What is remaining? Maybe sparkles of shell and all that. Nigeria is a failed state. What we need to do is, how do we resurrect the elephant that is lying on the ground? How do we pick up? What instrument do we need to use to bring up the elephant? The elephant is lying prostrate. You're talking about tax reform in the midst of unheard corruption, in the midst of institutions not living up to their billings. The corruption agencies, the police force, the civil service, performing like there's no captain. In all the states, local government comatose. Local government system is crumbled on its feet. So if you have a system that's collapsed, if you have a system that is not running on full gas or pedal, what you should need to do first is how do we begin to create a new awareness of a nation state? Because if you're proud of your nation, you don't take away from that country such huge money like we saw in Abuja. Somebody who had 735 duplexes, a human being taken out of that kind of resources from a system that is not policed, that is in a system that is ungoverned, and you talk about tax reform. Meanwhile, you have removed 130 million Nigerians. You have removed almost all the corporations. You have removed all the viable industries that are crumbling out of punitive electricity bills. You've killed virtually everything that breathes in Nigeria. Everything that works in Nigeria is pulsating with half breath. So what is the idea if it is not a regional, ethnic-based situation? You can now pick up the reform itself. But I have laid my foundation so you can see how I am thinking that reform came too early. First steps. We need a fundamental restructure of the country. We need, at least in the minimum, regionalism.
But in all you've narrated so far, don't you think that the tax reforms will help curb some of these excesses in the area of this high level of corruption?
No.
And to a certain level, bring equity to the table in wealth distribution. The harder you work, the more you get. The fewer your it's no longer going to be the margin of sharing this time around.
The issue is there are things we should know. There are taxes that are state taxes. There are taxes that are by principle of the three-tier system. There are taxes that are good for the local governments. They are the ones the state governments hold on. And then there are the ones you can call the federal taxes. It doesn't stop you from doing your system in such a way that you enhance your internally generated revenue. Some states are working hard to uplift theirs. River State, I guess, is doing marvelously well after the exit of their former governor. Some states are doing well in terms of their own permissible revenue windows. Anambra State has their own global issues that are trying to reform and reduce leakages. Because the problem is not about generation.
Yeah.
It is not actually about generation. That's enough. That's why you can see NNPC under the audited report, 850 billion naira is missing, 250 million US dollar is declared missing. Is that a system? The corporate body that looks like the Brasilia oil company that finances virtually everything in Brasilia because there's accountability, there's a watchdog, there's punishment for a crime. But in Nigeria, everything is plausible, everything is malleable, everything can be bent. And will you believe now the scenario I have cast that this tax reform is worthy of mention at this mature time? The poverty, a lot of people have been thrown back into the poverty net in the last 1 year. A whole lot of Nigerians, including your very good self, have been thrown back into the 4 years ago, some people kind of smarted out of the poverty bracket. But a lot of people have been jumped back, looped back. So the level of poverty in Nigeria cries out to high heavens. So who are you taxing? Somebody asked.
The super rich.
Where are they?
The corporate entity.
Where are they?
The 3 tiers of government.
Where are they?
Yeah.
The Nigerian economy is not run regularly. The people who are super rich are the people who are not even paying taxes.
That's what the government wants to correct with this new tax.
It will not address it. Because when you don't run a legitimate economy, where a lot of the large chunk of incomes that some of the people will see as billionaires and trillionaires are not legit.
But in all
there are not sufficient forensic documentation of what some people do. The banking sector is not a vault for all they have, all they do. Nigeria is run on an alternative economy, what they call the alternate economy. Like before the war, Italy, Second World War, Italy. They had a parallel government, legitimate government and illegal government run by the mafias and those who finance it. So that is what Nigeria is running like. When we get into it, I will tell you, look at why the North is bereaved about this tax reform. The tax reform is not in their favor because they are not running a regular economy. The cattle, the food chain that come from them are not documented. They are run by sheikhs, emirs, that are not taxable, that government finances. You don't even know who owns the heads of cattle you see. Is it the Fulani headsman? that you don't know the number of cattle in his hand that you are going to tax? Is it on a regular income? The cows are not counted.
Well, we'll get to that. Let us get to hear from our street parliamentarians on what their view and their opinions are based on this new tax reforms, and then get back to the studio and we'll continue our discussions. Don't go anywhere. The program is just getting started and the heat is getting intense.
Tax is one of the, maybe, what government used to develop cities, towns, countries. But in our own client here in Nigeria, the government tax the citizens without us seeing the impact of those taxes. If the tax they have been taxing us for long has been implemented into developments and infrastructures, I think Nigeria will have been a better place. For instance, I could remember 2023, May 29th, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was sworn in. On the first day of his swearing in, he said that he's abolishing the fuel subsidy without any cushion effect. After removing it, we can see the hardship it caused on the citizens. From that 2023 up till now, I believe if Nigeria we are living on 100 naira, $1 per capita, now I believe that we are living on $0.3 per capita as citizens. So, coupled with insecurity and all whatnot, then you are bringing the tax reforms, which is going to inflate the citizens more. Because we are talking about the tax reforms. If the government we are taxing themselves, I believe the president should cut down on his own expenditures. Buying a presidential yacht, which means nothing for the citizens, which means nothing for the development of citizens. You are saying that you want to do this, you want to do that. Let that tax reform start from the presidency. You buy a presidential jet, then the House of National House of Assembly, yes, they bought cars worth millions of, hundreds of millions of naira for themselves. At the same time, these citizens that you are inflicting more pains on, you want to still tax them more. For me, it's going to be too hard on the citizens.
I heard about it, and my own opinion is that government should look into their income to know their sources of income, whether they will be able, so that the masses will not suffer for it. Because sometimes maybe the tax, we are paying tax of 5,000, they will take because of it, then increase it to 10,000. Then I said, let government look into their income, their sources of income, know how much they are making, not to do expenses that will be greater than your income. It will affect the country and affect the masses.
The new tax reform is really going to be of a great benefit to the citizens of Nigeria if we all do comply, because particularly in Anambra State, we have seen the result of the tax that has been paid by some citizens and how it is going. So in my own very opinion, I believe that if all the citizens comply and do their due diligence in paying or adhering to the new tax reform, I believe that we have a better nation and a more beautiful Nigeria.
Parliamentarians and everybody keeps saying, well, the pros and the cons of the tax reform. At the same time, you begin to wonder, like we are discussing here in the studio, to what end is this tax reform going to, bring to the table? That's for the common man. Is it going to better the life of the average Nigerian? Is it going to make life easy and accessible to Nigerians? Medical, health, and the rest of it all, accommodation, school, a whole lot should be there. It's not just all about the government raking in money. What they do with the money is equally important. Well, we still have Barrister Chris Arukwe in the studio. still talking about the tax reforms bill and trying to see if, by the time the plenary resumes by the 31st of January this month, if the bill will be passed, and then Nigeria will now be ushered into a new era of, will I say, improved tax derivation, and then we'll now see where the tax, the money is collected, and the implementation of that. Quickly, Barrister, in all these things, is there any positives in it so far? Because most northern state governors are kicking against this tax reform. In the paper we read this morning, only 6 governors, you understand? Only 6 governors gave consent at the governors' forum for them to further discuss on this tax reform. And 2 of those 6 governors, I think, were like from the southwest states, if I'm not mistaken, either 2 or 3 of them were from the southwestern states. So is there something in this tax reform that seems to favor a part of the region as against the entire equity sharing of Nigeria based on what we have?
Yes, the tax bill, which we have not adequately looked at, is made of 4 bills that's coming into a compendium of 300 pages. They have stated their central objective to make sure that the era of multiple taxation, multiple agencies that are collecting, and to make accountability of what is collected to be known, so that to aid budgetary effort and processes. Those are laudable things that generally, but you know that in Nigeria, no matter how it sounds good on paper, at the level of implementation is a different ball game. Nobody cries out against a reform, but there are reforms that should come before the tax reform. That's what majority of the people.
Are you talking about sensitization or people?
Not sensitization. Those are minor issues. What people are talking about is that we have a broken country that's not working. We have a country that the structure, the upper structure has no foundation, or the type of foundation the country has is problematic and burdensome. What do? Either you pull down the structure, revamp the foundation, and build up again, or you try to use ingenuity to solidify the foundation in order that it can carry the superstructures. There are many things. The conference, the report on the
confab of previous administrations?
Yes. Those things that were aimed at reviewing the Constitution, and so that you have the idea of regionalism. You have the independence of some states, quasi-independence, where you can have a situation, look at the judiciary, for example. You can have state Supreme Courts, just like you have in America. It's not every matter that is of a regional content that should go to the Supreme Court.
The
federal. Like if you have a situation where there's an issue of customary marriage that is internal to us, would a couple wait and go to Supreme Court to have adjudications or final adjudications on their marriage? I'm just using this for example. So there are a lot of things we should have started our acts on. To build a very, very veritable country, we need a structural reform. We need to say, if we cannot have independent states, if you cannot have independent regions, can we have regional entities, 6 geopolitical zones that we now have? Can we have a regional governance? We pay tax to the center, but we have regional autonomy, more to say. We work on our own universities, we work on our own police, we work on our own judiciary. It is only when state and states are involved or inter-regional conflicts that such matters should go to the Supreme Court. Or matters that are actually very, very national, where the Supreme Court need to make a pronouncement, make a decision, make a judgment that will affect everybody in the realm, that is everybody globally, not just normatively. So what we're saying is that this thing is not the problem of the country now. The country is broken. You repair the country. Repair the country by hoisting it on a strict foundation. The type of foundation, there are various types of foundation. The type of foundation that will carry the superstructure, that will give every region its own benefit, its own merit.
Could that be the reason why some of the state governors are not agreeing to,
let me tell you the most objectionable part. Why the whole of the North is opposed to the tax reform. While the tax reform is an ill-fated attempt at regionalism, people are trying to move away from the dependencies of this Abuja government. That is, everything holds up in Abuja. Money is distributed, FAC, every end of the month and all that. People are trying to say, how do we move away from such? In such a way that we don't need to go to Abuja. We already know what we will have by ourselves, by our own merit, and work on it. Where the federal government will not be a tax collecting agency, collecting for the countries, collecting for the whole country, and distributing to the states' pupils. And we are tempted to say, he said that initially the president said that the Orasanya report will be ready in 6 weeks. Orasanya report wanted to streamline the bureaucracy, would have dealt with the bureaucracy, reduce the ministries and agencies in such a manner that will have a strict, efficient, small government. The smaller, the better. But now we have the largest cabinet, the largest infrastructure of ministers and agencies in the entire world, if you ask me, where appointments are made every day, where the budget for the health ministry is smaller than what we use to maintain Asorok, where computers are bought every day, where houses are painted every budgetary season, where new buildings need to be built to extend the luxury end of our ministers, our vice presidents, and where jets and hoists and yachts are needed to be bought and are bought every day, where aircraft needs to be changed every other day and all that. This is not what we need now. What we need is to have a slick, beautiful, egalitarian governance, where we can assure that when we go to an election, we don't know who is going to win. That is the beauty of an election. We want to have an institution where the choice of the people matter, where my vote counts, where we would not know who is going to win. That is an election. If I'm going to a contest with you, and everywhere I go, there's a rant, Ajul has won, Ajul has won, will I not better go back to my house?
Well, that's on a different note.
Yes, but what we're doing here is that the institutions in Nigeria are not functioning. And then who will police the state? If the institutions are not working, every policy or program is bound to nosedive and hit the rocks. That's what we're talking about. So this tax reform came in the midst of clatter. It came in the midst of burgeoning corruption, midst of failed institutions, INEC, police, ICPC. The rest of it are comatose and very cosmetic. Where the police people can arrest somebody for a civil offense, civil defamation, and keep him because somebody has paid the bills. Where civil rights and liberties are not guaranteed anymore, where opposition is stifled. This is not the atmosphere where a tax reform would function. Where the poverty level is still below the international mark. Where there is no minimum wage thereabout, albeit implementation. Where the minimum wage of Nigeria cannot buy a bag of rice. So where do you place the importance of this tax reform? Where you now say the most collapsible part of that tax-based reform is the VAT Act, where there is no attribution before derivation. Where you know the VAT Act, value-added tax, is a consumption tax that's multi-stage. Yeah. You pay it, everybody pays it in one form or the other. But the person who picks the bill is actually the consumer of that product or services. Now what it means is that MTN has, like they claim, they have 130 million subscribers with headquarters in Lagos. And for derivation, you are entitled to 60%. Therefore, since MTN has headquarters in Lagos, they have attribution, not derivation. They have attribution of 60% of derivable VAT earnings of Anambra.
Since you're talking about...
This is what the reform is talking about. Yeah. So when you now go to the north, there's no derivation because...
No headquarters of corporate organizations are domiciled there.
That is one. And two, the economy is running on the alternate concept, the alternate economy I'm talking about, undocumented economy. They are living in a Sharia community state. The North don't pretend about it. We don't have the same type of cultural tendencies, tradition and concept and worldview with the North. The whole of the South is different from the North. This is the popular view. And then if you regionalize, if you make something that should be a regional concept to be a national concept, it's not going to work. Because you and I, as Easterners, have an ideology that is competitive. We want to work, we want to get better, we want to build houses and all that. The Northerners don't have that worldview that you have. They bring yams, they bring tomatoes, but they are running an undocumented economy. So that the concept of derivation and attribution cannot effectively work in the North.
But then,
VAT, for example.
In the same tax reform, the North, like you just made, like you likely said now, are producing the yam, the tomato, the vegetables, and the rest of it all. In that VAT, in that reform, that bill reform, zero tax, zero VAT for export of goods. So there is still something for you to benefit when you're talking about this tax reform. Imagine now you need to like export your cassava, your groundnut and everything that you plant there in the north. Nobody's going to be asking you to pay.
You talk about export.
Yeah, export.
And I mean you mean international export.
Yeah, international export.
Sorry, what you're exporting hasn't been processed in a manner that meets international minimum health standards.
We'll get
Nigerian yams, no, you don't get there. Nigerian yams are not exportable
Not only yams, we have a whole lot of things that we can export.
Other things, our tomatoes are not processed.
Beans and the rest of it all.
They are not processed in manners that meet international health standards. Ghana is the country supplying all the yams they eat in the UK. Why is that? Because we plant with our cassava, with our fertilizers. We don't process our tubers in manners that can be accounted for. Minimum health standards. It's an important issue where we don't have exportable products. We produce more cassava than any country in the world. We produce more yams than Ghana can produce because one, we have the acreage, we have the manpower, and we even have the natural geographic soil that makes fertility. But why are we here? Everything in the North is not documented. It's not running, the North is not running a regular economy, but a Sharia-induced state of affairs, the alternate economy. Who controls the yam market?
Okay.
So there's no strategic economy in the North. So that attribution is very irregular and impossible. Every alcohol, a little bottle of beer that is drunk in the North cannot be attributable to the North. Every productive activity that's happening in the North cannot be attributable to them.
Well, I think we will need more than a day to talk about this tax.
So you see why they are agitated.
Yeah.
You see why they are agitated. But previously, VAT is distributed in accordance with other geographical local government quantity of, and they don't drink the beer. The Southerners, the Westerners, these are the people who consume alcohol in quantities that are appreciable, that sustains the breweries.
The breweries and the rest of it. Well, on this note, I'll say thank you so much because we still have our sporting segment to come after this. Well, it's been a pleasure having you around, and then I've not really dealt extensively with this tax reform. 366 pages of this. Well, I think there's still going to be a need for further review of this thing so that we can talk about the pros aspect of it, because I believe there are certain areas of this tax reform that should actually touch, citizens, Nigerians alike. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Barrister Chris Arukwe, for making yourself available and at this time to talk about this thing. The show is not ending. The show continues immediately after this because the sports segments will be coming up shortly. Don't go anywhere. We're still on Good Morning Anambra. The show continues.
Thank you, viewers, for coming.